Once again, welcome everyone. Happy to see everybody gathering. We're going to give it just another minute or two and we will get started. Welcome everyone, let's get started. Our topic today is surveys and quizzes. It used to be that was not an easy thing in the Microsoft world. It could be done. You could create something in the old days with a SharePoint list and then an info path form that sat on top of it. And it gave you the flexibility to do some of the things we would associate with a survey or a quiz, but it wasn't easy. There was a bit of a process to go to create that. There wasn't anything where you could just kind of start clicking and figure it out as you go. Tools like SurveyMonkey made a whole industry out of filling that niche. I can remember over the past 15 years or so, different places I worked, how many people I saw that just paid for SurveyMonkey on their own dime so that they could do something easily because it wasn't an official tool in their company. So that worked, but there are options now that are likely included in the licensing that you have available from your job with Microsoft 365. The tool is called Microsoft Forms. Let's talk just a little bit about that so we can get an idea of what it is, first of all. What do you think of when you think of making a survey? What are the needs that you would have, your requirements? Well, first of all, it needs to be easy to build. It can't be anything that feels like a dev project because you just need to gather some feedback quickly from somebody. It needs to be easy to share, to get out to the people. You shouldn't have to worry about complicated permission or publishing processes to get that out to the people that you need to fill it out. You should have a variety of question types. Not every question is created equal. So you need some things to be free-form text. You need choices. Maybe those are drop-down menus, or maybe they're buttons. Maybe you need scales, people to do ratings on, things like that. It's also nice if you can make one question, move this over, I'm in the way, right? If you can make one question dependent on another one. So branching logic is what that's called in survey tools. We also would need a way to have reporting on results. So once people have filled out our survey or our quiz and come back, we need to be able to see what was there, what happened, what were those responses. Now, if you're not building a survey, you're building a quiz, your needs are almost the same, right? Those first three still apply. But with a quiz, you probably want some way for it to score itself when you're doing it. Now, the good news is Microsoft Forms can do all of that. Let's jump into a demo environment here, and I'll show you how some of this works. So here I'm on the Office homepage. And if I go to this tool called Microsoft Forms, the icon looks like this. If you don't see that on your little shortcut list, if you go to the All Apps page like this, or if you click the whole waffle, there's an All Apps way, you can find it there. What you're looking for is Microsoft Forms. This one right here has a green with kind of an F on it. When you click that, it'll bring you into the Forms homepage, where it shows you forms that you have access to within your organization. Now, the ones that we see up here are just ones that I've had recently. We also have the ability to pin items. So if you have a particular one that you want to keep track of and use frequently, you can add that to your pin list. You can also look at ones that people shared with you to collaborate with them on. You can find those there. Another thing that's important here is to notice that the Microsoft groups you have that fuel your team sites, or maybe even your teams and channels that use the Microsoft Teams, those show up here as well as kind of security containers. So like if I go to the product team, you'll find that there's a list of forms and quizzes that belong to the product team that I'm a member of. Okay, let me go back. Let's take a look at a sample one here. This sample survey is one that I just mocked up in 5 or 10 minutes before our webinar. Always slower when we have an audience, right? There we go. So it's a sample survey. Notice we can create multiple questions. We can add images. There can be free-form text. We also have a question down here that is a multiple choice question where we made it look like buttons. We have a rating scale down here that I chose, instead of giving it star ratings or 1 through 5, I chose to give it different answers, different things that are here. All these are here, and it's possible for us, when we click preview up here, to actually see the survey work. Eric, what is my quest? Favorite color for coconuts, that would be brown. I like gray armor. And let's say yellow, no blue. Okay, so easy to fill out. I'm going to click the back button here. This puts us back in our editing view for it. So very easy to create, very easy to use. Let's look at how we actually do the creation with this though. I'm going to click back. A couple of times here. Puts us back on our Forms homepage. Let's go create another one. So as our example, let's go into the product team and let's create a survey here that belongs to our team so that all of us can make changes and access the responses and things like that. So up here, I have the choice to create a new group form. It will open up here. We're going to make this a very simple survey. I'm not going to worry too much about putting in a fancy title or anything like that. I'm just going to start adding questions. Now, the first question here gets down to what type I would like. I'm going to say I want this first one to be a choice. Let's say that we're planning a team retreat for the product team, and I want to gather some feedback about what everybody thinks we should do. So where should our team retreat be held? Disneyland, Ruth Chris. How about the beach? And McDonald's. Oh, they have a Playland anyway. Okay, let's add another question. Let's say for our second question here, we'd like to know, okay, how many days would you like to go? And I'm just going to make this a free form text one. How many days should we go? And notice that down here, we have some other choices here. We could put restrictions in place. So if I'm asking how many days, I probably want this to be a number, right? So I'll put restrictions, and I could say number, and then I could even be more specific than that if I wanted a particular Let's say that less than or equal to 5 days. We're not going to go longer than a week, a business week. Okay, let's add another question. Let's make this one a date. When should it be held? Notice we get a nice little date picker control here. Let's make another one. Let's do instead of a rating, let's do what's called a Likert. Okay. So that's one of those where you get a matrix, kind of like you saw in our sample one. So let's say for this one, what? Let's say we're going to give a choice of a hat, a shirt, wristband. Let's get fancy. Let's say a puffer vest. Okay. Up here, let's just give this a scale of 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 5. Pretty easy to create a ranking grid that people can use with these. Let's see. That's probably enough in the way of questions here. Now, one other thing that you can do is you can create sections. Let's preview it to see what it looks like. First of all, you can see that in just a few seconds here, we've created something that has 4 different types of questions. They're in order for us, but maybe we don't want them all to show in one big list. Maybe we want to have a next button. Maybe we want to put some logic in here as to how this works. So I'm going to click back. Puts me back in our edit view here. One of the things that you can add down here, instead of a question, you can add what's called a section. And then you can move questions down into those. Notice we have buttons up here at the top to change the order. So if I move this one down into section 2, I'm going to call this section 2 because I'm not very creative. Section 1 is my first section up here. We can do that. Now, if you preview, you'll notice that we see the first 3 questions, but there's a next button before you get to the last one. Okay. Sections make it easy for you to divide things up into those next and previous kind of sections. What if we have something a little fancier though? For instance, this question, how many days should we go, really only applies if you pick something like Disneyland or the beach, right? Somebody picks a restaurant, we're not going to stay at a restaurant for days. So how do we do that? Well, on this question, when we're in our edit view here, there is a choice down here as well to add branching, if you notice. So if I choose that, I now get a little control next to each one of my answers where I can specify if somebody picks Disneyland, what's the next question to go to? So I'm going to say, how many days? If we do this one, I'm going to say to go to section 2. The beach, how many days? Or McDonald's, section 2. Right? But you get an idea, you can have kind of a fork in the road. So as people fill out the survey, the early steps determine what things they have afterwards. The order of the questions makes a difference here. And then with the branching, you can specify where do we skip to. We do those. So let's preview again. Okay, I'll go back. We'll preview. Notice I have just one question now because it doesn't know what else to show me here. So if I choose Disneyland, then it asks me how many days and when. If I choose a restaurant, it does not. The next button would just take me to the second step or the second section. So very easy for you to configure a survey that makes sense. At least 80% of the surveys that I've seen created over the years would fit pretty nicely and easily into this tool. There are, of course, some more advanced things that you might find in other tools that aren't here. For instance, if you wanted to create things that send people back to the beginning, there's no way to go backwards with branching in this tool. But it really is a pretty powerful, pretty easy way to create things. Let's talk about a couple of other pieces here we want to look at. For instance, let's go look at a quiz. I'm going to close this tab. I've still got my home page open here for my product team. I'll refresh. You'll see that the new one I created is here now too. There it is. The untitled form is the one I just now created. This untitled quiz is another one that I staged ahead of time just so we could save ourselves a little time. If you go into it, by the way you get into this, if you wanted to create a new quiz, instead of choosing a new group form, you would choose a new group quiz right here. And here's one where I've already staged the beginnings of one. You'll notice here we've got questions. Now remember, the difference between a quiz and a survey is mostly that there is a right or wrong answer on these, right? And that you want to be able to tabulate a score automatically when someone submits it. So how do we do that? Well, you notice question number 1 here is one of those multiple choice questions. I could specify on any of these that there is a correct answer. See the checkbox? This one is the correct answer. Now notice we have the ability here to let people pick multiples if we'd like. We have an ability to pick how many points is this question worth if they get it correct. Down here, we have more of a free-form text. So if we're going to create a correct answer here, we need to specify what that is. Notice I put in a question of, or an answer of blue for the color of the sky. Notice that if I try to type it in with other cases, it doesn't matter. This is not case sensitive, which is nice and easier for grading purposes. Here I have an answer that allows for multiple answers. See the answers turned on here? Again, correct answers, I could pick more than one. When you're adding questions, this should look familiar, right? It's the same choices that we had before when we were creating a survey. The difference with a quiz is that we can specify what's correct and assign point values for when people pick the correct answers. Nice, easy way for you to create these experiences. If your background comes from learning and development, from training, from those types of things, it's really nice to be able to quickly create a post test for something that you put together. So Microsoft Forms is a great, easy way to do that. For all VisualSP customers, if any of you have edit rights in VisualSP to create help items, you may want to create a help item that is a quiz. That way you can tie it to governance and things, make it easy for people to find. If they want to be a site owner, here's a few help items to view, and here's the quiz to take at the end. Nice, easy ways for you to integrate Microsoft tools with the VisualSP Help tab. Let's go back a bit here. Let's talk, well, actually, let's not go back. Let's do it right here on this quiz. There are a couple of things that are important to talk about up here at the top. We mentioned the preview already. There's a theme choice as well. You can pick these that give you different color themes. Some of them even have background images and things in them. Or you get a plus button down here where you can do that yourself. You can pick what color you would like. If I go back to one that was not quite that fancy, gives it a little simpler here. You could even just type, I believe this works. If you type, now you gotta have a hex code. Sorry, I messed this one up for us. Let's pick a picture though, because that one's pretty helpful. Let's search for ocean. I don't really have a picture that makes sense necessarily for this, so I'm gonna pick one. I'll pick this one with a sunset, how's that? And we'll add it. It'll make that my background picture for the survey. And notice it also will do some things. Many times it'll pick a picture out of our image to use as our color theme for it too. This one already had one picked, so it didn't change it on me. Easy ways to theme. The next button is for sharing. When you click on the share button, you'll notice that here we're talking about who's able to respond to this, and you have a couple of other choices. Anybody, anywhere that has access to a web browser, only people within my organization, or just specific people, you can do that. These are the ones that are allowed to give you responses to your quiz or your survey. You can copy the link and use that and email it out or put it in a news article in your intranet or whatever it is you need to do. You also have the ability to share this quiz or survey setup as a template for other people in your organization to use. You can also get a link to share with people so that they are able to collaborate with you on this survey. They could come and make changes to the questions or the answers. They can work with the results that come back with the responses, all those things. So sharing to collaborate is different than just sharing for people to respond. One other thing that I'm going to point out up here is there is a separate little menu with a settings blank that has some of those things in here as well. For instance, who can fill out the form, the responses are here. Notice that it also gives you some more advanced things. For instance, you can pick a start and an end date when this quiz is available, or a survey, same thing. If you're doing branching logic, the shuffle questions doesn't make any sense, but it could if you're, if all the questions are created equal, like more like in this quiz. Okay. So extra settings that you can make here, again, all very simple for you to work with as the survey or quiz owner, or part of the team that owns it or is shared with. Lots of good things to do here. Let's take a look at some responses. I have another quiz that has a couple of responses in it already. That one that we looked at to begin with, the sample survey. So as an owner of this survey, I can look at the responses that have been submitted up here, and I get a nice summary page of this. Gives me an idea of, for each question, what do we have? These are just the latest responses. Okay. Down here, I can see a pie chart of who made what choice on my choice fields. The one that was a rating scale of different, kind of a matrix of different options, I get a more sophisticated bar chart. Again, it shows me how those questions are broken down across the answers. Notice you can also open these results in Excel. So give it just a moment here. And we'll open that file just so you can get an idea of what this looks like. Pretty easy, right? Here in Excel, when was it done? You get an idea of how long people spend in these, who was the person that filled it out, their name, and then the answer to each one of the questions. Nice and easy, and you can do whatever you want with it once you get it in Excel, right? Excel is the ultimate equalizer for all processes. So lots of good things that we can do here in Microsoft Forms. Let's give it just a moment here. Let's go back to our slide deck. We would like to mention also that Microsoft Forms is kind of expandable. So you can create things that integrate with this, such as Power Automate. If you create a flow in Power Automate, there are almost 196 of them, 94 of them, sorry, where they have forms-related templates you can just pick from and fill in the blanks for how you want the automation to work. Get an idea. Every time somebody responds to a quiz, notify me and store the response somewhere. Notice the where is SharePoint in this case. Gives you an idea of how you can use this survey or this quiz as just a means to collect the data and then have the automation go put that somewhere or do something with the information that's filled out there. Nice and easy for you to automate and get rid of some of that manual effort. As always, there is other help available. You don't have to remember everything we talk about in the demos here. You'll see as we have it right up here, quite a few help items are available in the Forms app from the VisualSP Help tab. Now, there are several of these that cover things that we just talked about, like there's choices here about branching logic. Here's how you get rid of branching if you put it in or change your mind later. Here's how you use the branching logic. Here's information about how you share the form with others, how you view the results and use with them, creating quizzes versus creating forms themselves, theming, all those things we were talked about. There's help available for these. All these are 1 or 2 minute videos or a very quick read along the same lines. So nice and easy for you to get help as you start to experiment and play with these. And when you do encourage you to do that, you'll find that there's a lot there that's useful. Forms is not a replacement for InfoPath in the old days, or if you're used to using SharePoint lists and forms there, it's not really a replacement for that either, but it's a simpler choice that has some advantages to it with things like branching. Some of the sharing options are nice and easy. The responses, it tabulates back. Nice and easy features here that sometimes are an advantage, or sometimes just the simplicity of it is worth doing here instead of in a SharePoint list. As always, you're not alone. There are other choices you can make to get more help afterwards. As VisualSP, we are a vendor for your organization already. We are the ones that offer that help tab over on the side and the content that goes there. We also offer services, whether that's coaching or whether it's actual help building something. So if you're interested in that, you can reach out to my email address right over there. Happy to give you more information about that. It's kind of like buying a gift card. You just buy a little block of hours and we can get on a Teams call or something else similar with you and either just coach you or find out what you're trying to build and help you get there as quickly as possible and up your skills along the way. So good to know that is there. Let's take a moment here and see if there's anything happening in the Q&A panel. Here in GoToWebinar, there is a Q&A panel. Looks like nobody has typed anything there yet. Oh wait, a couple of them coming in quickly now. All right, so question number 1 is, can you prevent people from responding to a quiz or a form more than once? Yes, you can. That's a great question. Let me switch back over to my browser. And here in the settings, there's a choice right here to only allow one response per person, right? It was already keeping track of the name. It does that automatically unless you tell it not to. But you can also make sure that people don't fill it out more than one time. That was a great question. Thank you for that. Another one, can responses be exported into Microsoft lists? Another good question. There's no obvious way here to go directly. However, if you open it up into Excel like we did before, in Microsoft lists, there is the ability for you to create one from there. Let's see, so if I go to lists, I'll click the new list. Notice one of the things we can do is bring it in from Excel. So if you would like to be able to get it up into Excel where you could do more things with it, such as Power Automate, things like that, it's certainly pretty easy for you to get it there once the responses have been tallied in. Now, of course, if you go through a manual process like this, dumping to Excel and then importing it, it won't be live, right? As more people fill out the form later, the survey or the quiz, they won't automatically wind up in your list. If you wanted to do something like that, you would need to use the Power Automate option that we mentioned earlier. You could say every time someone submits one of these, take that data they put and put it into this Microsoft list for me in the background. Certainly possible to do. In fact, the first template that we showed on that slide does something very similar to that. Another good question. All right, question number 3, are there any limitations to filling out the form on their mobile device? That is an excellent question too. Let me get back into my form. When you're previewing, notice that there's a choice up here that you can see what that looks like. Even if you're currently working on a computer yourself, you can go to the mobile view. Right, so mobile here, and actually when we're in preview, it's interactive. So you can go ahead and you can see that it is possible for you to use this just like you could on the others. Now notice here, the rating scale, the Likert scale that we talked about, looks a little different. It's done with accordion headings. It fits a smaller screen better. Do you see it? It adapts really well to a mobile device without you having to do anything extra. It's nice to look like you know what you're doing without actually having to know what you're doing, right? So, good question. They've really done a pretty nice job with Microsoft Forms. If your needs are surveys, if your needs are quizzes that do grading to them, or even if they're not those things, if it's just a data entry form, but it's pretty simple what you need, your customizations, Microsoft Forms is a pretty compelling choice to do that type of work with. Let's see, how are we on time? We've got just a few minutes left. Let's see, anyone else have questions for us? Those were some good ones. Thank you for those. We always encourage questions. It's a better webinar when we know what you're wondering. We can fill in the blanks. Okay. Well, I will mention here, let me switch back to our slide deck here. I will mention that our series of webinars, this is our last one for the year. We're not going to do one in December because so many people are gone. Or if they're there, they're trying to get a lot done in those last week or two that they're in the office. So we will not have a webinar in December. Next year, we're talking about some changes to the format that are more interactive. Maybe a brief topic and the opportunity for you to ask questions, even if it's not about the topic we're talking about, but those, how would I do this in Office 365 questions? So I look forward to those opportunities. We'll still notify you the same way. You'll still, if you are one of the VisualSP admins or editors in your organization, you'll see an email from it. If you've attended one of our previous emails, you'll see an email about it as it's coming up. We also have a help item that shows up in the help tab. We were mentioning this before. I believe it's under announcements. Yeah, there we go. Notice there's a help item here under announcements in the tab. That is just the form that helps you to register for these in the future. You can see what's coming up. What is the next one that's been arranged? So those are ways to do that, to keep up on what's happening with our webinar series. We're hoping you're seeing value out of this. By all means, reach out to us and let us know if you have feedback for it, or if you would like more information about how you can do things like this in a more one-on-one or private fashion. So let us know. Thanks a lot, everyone. We'll see you next time.